Hey everyone, welcome to Zen Hustlers Balance. We are excited to be back in season 2. And today we've got one of my favorite guests, one of my mentors in this world that I'm really proud to bring back on the show. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that Zen Hustlers is a free resource community. We support entrepreneurs, founders, professionals, busy parents, people who feel like they want to have more balance on the edge. They want to have an impact. They want to be really highly productive, but they're lacking a little bit of that balance somewhere in their lives. We usually say pick one area, dive in. We've got podcasts, we've got audio things you can listen to, live events, tons of books, almost 150 books that we've collected for you, social shares that we do, and we're just here to support you. If you're going through a really tough time, we've even got a crisis page that you can share or use personally. So on this podcast, we love to talk to people who walk the talk. People who've been through a really, life journey and they want to bring back and something to share because they've actually been through it. And I can't think of anyone who has kind of earned this more than what he's recently been through in his life. So when we say walk the talk, what if you couldn't walk? So Steve Napolitan, thank you for joining us. Welcome back, man. It's so great to see you. We chatted a little bit earlier. Tell people where you're at in the world right now and how you're doing today.
Well, I'm doing great. And right now I'm presently just north of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So
And you've got your family and everyone's well?
everyone's well.
That's great.
Yes.
Steve is an author. He's a coach. He's a high-end consultant to CEOs, helping them have more balance and more freedom in their lives, how to redesign their lives, which I've always loved and has always influenced my life. One of his big things is about planning your fun, which I love. Plan the things you want to do as much as plan the things you have to do, right? And you've got a new book coming out we can talk about later if you'd like.
Absolutely. I'm open to share. I've got a number of books. We have some skills series. That's going to be a series of books. And then I'm also working on my life story right now, which I thought was going to be something I would do a lot later in life. But there's so many, like you alluded to already, some big things happen in my life. And it made sense to share, like, how did I get to that moment? And what did I learn so that I could transcend that moment in a great way and share that story.
That's
So,
what we want to concentrate on today. So remind me of the timeline. When did the GBS syndrome start for you?
and for those that don't know, GBS stands for Guillain-Barré syndrome. And so it was August 4th of 2021. So I'm right at the time we're recording this, about 19 months. And a lot of people, there's different severities of it, but I was paralyzed legs, arms, and my face. And so it's quite severe. Like, even it was affecting my lungs. Luckily, I didn't have to go on a breathing machine. I was able to turn the corner before that happened. But with that severity, most of the people my age that I talked to that was already going through therapy for this, they were 5.5 years. I heard like several of the people that were pretty active and healthy, like I was. So about 3 to 5 years of recovery. So I've kind of, in a way, done a lot of things in half the time of the recovery.
And just so remind folks, Steve is very active. He loves to play music. He has children he plays with. He's a super active guy. So when this kind of stuff happens, man, it really it's got to hit you sideways so hard because you're so used to a great lifestyle and you've just got to transition everything. So I want to dive back into that April date. How did it start for you and how did you get through those initial phases?
Yeah, there's another month that starts with A, August, but it was crazy, brother. Like, so when that happened, at first you're kind of a little bit in denial, like, because I didn't get fully paralyzed. Like, what happened is I fell down. I had just gotten back from a trip of doing 7 speaking engagements in 4 different states, and I had just gotten home, and I think I was home 3 days. So it's kind of resting, relaxing a little bit. And I fell down outside. I thought my feet had fallen asleep, like as I was sitting on some of my stairs out in my yard.
And you know how you sometimes you like sit a little wrong and your foot falls asleep. That's what I thought happened. And then within 7 days, that it just crept up my legs, crept up my arms, from my hands. And you're right, it's quite scary. I have never had a medical episode like that. I've never been hospitalized. And it was just wild. And so you could see how you would go into depression. Like I could see how people would get really scared. And I'm not saying I wasn't. There was definitely fear.
Yeah.
There were definitely tears. But then I have gone through so much mindset work over more than a decade. When anything adverse happens to me, I feel that, right? And then you say, I can't move, right? You literally can't move. But then I start to say, okay, well, that's not what I want. And because of that, those techniques that I use in meditation, I started asking myself, what would I like? And on top of this, I have to tell you, when I say my face is paralyzed, that means I couldn't blink. I couldn't move my mouth, my tongue. I was starting to like slur my words. And so my eyes are literally taped shut. So Jared, what did I do? I just meditated. I just started meditating and visualizing myself. I thought of, I don't know if you ever heard of the Miracle Man. It was a guy in the 1980s. He crashed his plane. They said he wasn't going to live. But they were going to, literally the family was talking about pulling the plug on him. And then he was blinking. He could blink. He was blinking Morse code. And there was a nurse that was military and she saw that he was saying something. She's like, wait, is that Morse code? And then they wrote down, and he said, I'm going to walk out of here. So the family kept him from, they didn't pull the plug, obviously, with that.
Yeah.
And he literally regrew parts of his body that medically they did not know. So that was in my mind. So all this mindset training, all these people I've heard from was in my head. I was like, well, I'm not going to just lay here and just cry. You know, I'm not saying I didn't have those moments, but I just said, so I've been telling people I had dark days, but I didn't have any dark weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me when we spoke earlier, and I think that was really powerful that you allowed yourself, or, you know, it happened, but you didn't allow yourself to stay in that dark place for too long. So give us a daily glimpse of, you know, and I got to say, seeing the photos, because you were brave enough and courageous enough to share your journey, so I knew, and the people that love you and follow you knew what was going on with you. And just heartbreaking to see, by the way, because you've got such a big, beautiful smile. And so when your face was, you know, not able to react because of the syndrome, it really was intense. And I knew something, it just was such a dramatic thing for someone who's so outwardly positive and smiling. And so it was such a contrast to how we know you, Steve. And so I just want to appreciate you. And it reminds people, like, when you're going through something, it's okay to share the journey as much as you're comfortable, because it helps with empathy and compassion and allows people to get inside your skin a tiny bit. And I can't even imagine what you've been going through. So describe that process of, you know, days versus weeks. What do you think is the key there?
Well, I think it was reminding myself. So there's a meditation teacher told me a long time ago. They said, when you have a thought in your mind that you don't want, or you know doesn't serve you, then tell it to stop. And I thought it was the most ridiculous thing at the time, because I was like, oh, that's easy for you. Good luck, right? Like, our mind kind of takes its own place.
Yeah.
And then years later, I met Carl Buchheit, who is a big mentor in my life. And he always said, the transition is, what would you like? And so then adding that in made the change. So every time I felt like scared, or, you know, thinking about my kids and like, what is it like if their dad can't walk anymore, or like, what is all these things that you think about, then I just reminded myself, well, that's not what I would like.
Yeah.
So what would I like? And then I just started, imagining that. You could say imagine, or visualizing. Another word that we use commonly is to visualize what you would like.
Yeah.
So I just started seeing that in my mind. And I actually literally in my mind went into my body, and I was like, okay, what do you need to heal? And what do we need? And things popped up. I'll tell you, when you go deep and another blessing, I never had meditated for like a whole day. or, and I've gone on retreats. I've gone on meditation retreats and like big ceremonies, but never the length of this. So inside there, I started hearing things like, because you know me as the guy, like you said, that is more business, more life. How do we systemize business so we work less and then we earn more? And that's been my mantra before that. But in this, it was like, that's not enough. You need to slow down even more. And literally, I'm paralyzed. So, like, talk about the ultimate slowdown. You can't move. And I think what happened during the pandemic, I let more work creep into my life, more than I would put, maybe even in denial. And so I often say to my clients, life will tap you and it'll tap you. And then when you don't listen, it'll slap you. And so I think I got slapped. And so it's that honest conversation with myself, which is not easy to do. But I think when you want to break it down to steps, like you were saying, first step is to say, okay, I'm scared. It's like actually seeing and receiving what's going on. I am scared. This is not what I would like. Now I have to ask myself, what would I like? And it might not come right away because the fear might be overwhelming. So you have to keep asking, what will I like? What would I like? What would I like? Until that becomes the dominant thought in your mind. That's the transition
That's the transition from days to weeks. And you felt like you had a choice in your mind. I just want to clarify that. You felt like there was a real concrete choice that you could make and choose left or right, right?
And I think yes. And I have to say, this is not from like a beginner's stage. I have been meditating since 2008. I've studied so many things around neurolinguistics, family systemic patterns, and, even Dr. Joe Dispenza and all these books like Becoming Supernatural. I have had a lot of teachers. And so in that, I knew the power of the mind before this happened. If this would have happened to me 10, 15 years ago, I would have been a mess. Who knows where I'd be in my recovery.
Is it a syndrome where people lose their lives?
Yes, some people have, because because basically what happens, it's very similar to ALS, which is irreversible, or even Bell's palsy, other areas where it affects your nerves. So the myelin is think of it as the insulation over your nerve wire. And it's also the communication. It's also the telephone wire from the brain to all the parts of your body. So if I want to move my finger, it's communicating from my brain on the myelin. So literally, Guillain-Barré syndrome eats away. It's an immune response and attacks the body, and it eats the myelin away. And so then if it does that and it gets all the way into your lung muscles and other organs that are essential for living, it ultimately could kill you at that point, because then you could suffocate. And even they were really worried about that with me, because my tongue was being paralyzed. I wasn't allowed to eat or drink for like the first 48 hours because they didn't want me to put anything inside my mouth and choke, because I couldn't swallow.
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways you could die if you don't have good attention.
It's heavy, brother. It's heavy, brother, just hearing the intensity of it. So I think, we're Zen hustlers, so it's all about having that Zen and the hustle. So thank God you had that Zen in your life. Let's just say that, because it helped carry you through. You were smart enough and aware enough, awake to be like, I need to bring a lot of Zen into my life. And that's one thing. I'm so glad you did that back in 2008, so that by the time this happened, you had all this training. So again, for our listeners, start today. If you're not started, start today, because you don't know what kind of timeline runway you're going to need. It's a little bit like a business. You're going to need that runway to get to those dark days of those savings. And I think of it like, storing the saving skills. And now let's talk about the hustle, because you're someone who gets a lot done, highly productive. So walk us through, how do you transition as the CEO of a company who can really no longer run it at that moment and lean on your team? So talk to us about what that looks like. And obviously for the people that don't have a team or that do, how do you manage effectively during this terribly tragic period for you?
Well, again, I'm blessed that I had been building something. So literally, my wife messages my team and says, Steve's in the hospital. Maybe there was a message before that that I wasn't doing well, but everyone didn't pay much attention to it because anytime I've ever been not well, I would always get better right away because of my mindset again. So they just got a text message, and I couldn't work for about a year. So during I started to try, but I could feel my recovery slowing down, so I stopped. And so I'm blessed by my team. I think I'm so grateful to have a team. And I always used to say this, Jared: do what you do best and delegate the rest. And now coming off of Guillain-Barré, my mantra is delegate everything, even things I love. So it doesn't mean that I have to give it up. There are things I want to do the rest of my life, but I need to make sure that everyone in my company knows how to do everything. So if I'm not there, because there were things that broke for sure that I fully owned because I loved it. So I thought, why would I ever delegate that? Well, who would have known?
Give us a tangible example without giving away any client details, obviously, of what's one area that you were like, damn it, we missed this area. Like, what was one thing that broke for you?
Well, I'm the public speaker.
Yeah.
I mean, so massive exposure, client acquisition, because the way our model worked is I would go speak, and then a whole bunch of people would sign up for our programs, and so then you lose like one of the massive parts of your marketing. Even though we had other marketing elements, it was a huge factor that's undeniable. So now I'm training three other coaches right now that they've all been with me for 5+ years, but now I'm making sure that they can speak, they can get on the stage, and even that their name can be bigger than mine. It's I was already moving past ego over these all these years, but it's like completely gone now, and it's like this. Well, I don't know. I can't say that. Maybe there's like this 1% or something there. I can't say it's a zero, but being really honest. But ultimately, I want to see them shine more than me because then it transcends the legacy. Then this company goes beyond my life. And I knew I wanted that. I just thought it was like decades away. And now it's like, nope, this is now. And so that's where I want to say I believe life happens for us, not to us. So it's fast forward. So I've gained like 10+ years of personal development in this 1 year. Now, I'm not saying go get Guillain-Barré, and I hope none of you ever have to deal with this. But if you can learn from what I've gone through right now, the main thing of anybody that owns a business as quick as possible, even if you're one person, a solopreneur, you want to find one person that you can start training so that the company has at least two of you. So, and then
Like, we've got to disband the idea of solopreneur. We need dualpreneurs.
you have to have someone, or even a hire, or someone that maybe if you are really good and expert, then find an apprentice, right?
Yeah.
So at
Right? At
least
least
one
it's
To
person,
train up into the company. Yeah.
and they can
and
I love
ultimately
that. I
buy
love
it.
that.
Right.
It reminds me, someone years ago told me called the one bus rule. And so if someone were to be hit by a bus, would your business or your family still be able to exist? And if your number is one, it's not very good. So you want a 2, 3, 4, 5 bus rule so that if people were to be taken out of the team for any reason, and we've all been through this with the pandemic, could your family, because it's not just your work, you're sustaining an entire family too. How would the backup be provided? And so I'm guessing you leaned on every strategy you have. You came up with some new strategies. So we heard a little bit like your speaking career. So what was something that was in place, just to give people an example, that did work, and you were like, okay, great, we're ready to go.
Well, because of the longevity of my team, they literally were able to run all of our workshops, coaching calls, all of that stuff. So the business fulfillment stayed. That was solid. So we were able to maintain clients throughout. We did lose a few clients that said, "Hey, I signed up to be with Steve and he's not here." And they stayed for a while, but then they slowly drift away. But we were able to sustain our client base to the level that we did because of the longevity of my team. And because they knew what to do. So the main thing that was hit was growth. we weren't growing, we were sustaining and if not losing a little bit, but it kept the company alive. And I just want to be clear, there was no strategy in this. Just to be really honest, it was like I'm in bed, I can't move, I can't look at a phone, I can't push a button on a phone. That was it. I mean, literally when payroll was coming, my wife's like reading off from my accountant, like this is what it is, and I'm just like, and I couldn't even do a thumbs up. I just had to, say yeah. At that time, I was able to start talking a little bit and just say okay, but it was 100% release. I had to release the company and say whatever happens happens, because my being alive is the most important thing in my mind right now. I need to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And, thank God you had people and surrounded yourself with a team and a process that knew you well and didn't walk away from you either, so they could support you during this time period. Yeah, it's just an incredible journey because, at our darkest days, typically it's not that tough. Let's be honest. We can still function, we can still move, we can still speak. And that's something to always remember. It's like, it's always, it could be worse is always there. It's just, you're only presented with the reality that you have typically, so even just, and again, I just want to acknowledge you for sharing what you went through. When I would have dark days, I would think, well, I still have my facilities. I still can move. And it just reminded me, like, just be in gratitude, which has been your mantra going forward. For years and leading up to it. So you mentioned when we spoke earlier about gratitude, this is not coming from somebody who wasn't deeply in gratitude. And that's another thing. It's like you had your yoga practice and your meditation practice, but you were in a deep gratitude practice already. But I'm guessing even that had a whole new level for you.
Well, yeah. Can you imagine when you first start healing, you're feeling your leg and it's in pain and you're like, and I just was crying in pain and the nurses are trying to give me medication. And I said, I don't want it. I could feel my leg. You're actually grateful. You're grateful for the pain. Can you imagine being grateful for the pain? And my wife counted, it was like 13 pillows I had to prop my leg up just enough so it wouldn't hurt. Because when the muscle fatigue or what's it called, atrophy was real. Like because I was in a hospital bed for almost a month, and then another month of wheelchair. But I was starting towards the end of that month. I was starting to be able to get a few steps in, and then after that, I was able to use a walker. But the reality, like when you have your muscles like that, like actually just laying flat on the bed, having my leg, it would stretch the muscles out when I could start to feel them again. And it was excruciating pain. Like imagine a Charlie horse in all the muscles in your leg at the same time. And so I had to keep the legs bent. And I still chose, and it's crazy to me. I know it's crazy, but I chose not to have pain medicine because I wanted to feel what I was going through. And it actually was a joy in the fact that I could feel again. So I'm like, you're crying in pain. You're crying that something's happening. I can feel my leg again. Like, so even the simple things like that you would never think. And then to touch a spoon to my lip, like so grateful for that. Like even when you can't drink or eat for 48 hours, I've fasted before, but I planned on that. This, it was like, no, you can't eat. It's kind of like when someone takes something away from you. So the first time I could drink, I'm like grateful for that. So the simplest things in your life, you become extremely grateful for. And now, how we were talking about what my life journey is to live my life by design. Now I take it even one step further, Jared. It's what are the experiences that I want? Because this life is not finite, or it is finite. It's, we need to know what we want now, and we need to start living it now. And even I've made changes. I know for a fact 19 months ago, before this happened, I wouldn't have decided, but now because of this experience, I'm like, okay, I'm not waiting. I want to do this, and in my life I want to do this with my kids. And I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to wait for anything, because you never know what day is the end.
So well spoken, man. I'm just letting it set in. Thank you for sharing that so candidly because, I think you were someone who already embraced it and you just took it to that base level of every little moment of like, what am I doing? Like eating, moving, muscles, and feeling the pain is a wild story, man. Thank you for sharing that. It's really, it gets you in the headset of like, wow, the headspace of, where you must have been to want to feel pain and feeling grateful for feeling your body at that point versus like a numbness or nothing. So,
Well, and I didn't want to lose my mind.
yeah,
That's the other thing I didn't mention, but I was
yeah,
already meditating at that point quite deeply. And I knew that if I took pain medicine, I would lose I didn't want to lose any part of my consciousness because by that point I was already having success. So I had already turned the point. Now I'm starting to be able to feel again. So I didn't want anything to be taken away. And then I doubled down on my mindset and visualizing myself walking out of the hospital.
it's incredible. I'm so glad. And so, looking forward, you mentioned that you've got some new goals. You're restructuring a little bit of the business. Tell people about what's coming up. You've got a new book. Do you want to mention the book?
Well, so choose gratitude, create freedom has been our tagline, and it's our trademark as well. One of them, more business, more life is also one. But I think it's just that's the word. Choose gratitude, create freedom actually helped me transcend this. And so the story of that book is going to be what led up to make Steve be able to go through what we're talking about here. And then how did I deal with it? And then how can you take those lessons to change your life without having to have this type of trauma? So my goal of the book is that you can learn some of these lessons, take it into your life if you choose to, and make your life easier. And not like you said, then when you have another dark moment, I hope it's never what I had to go through, but then you could use these same techniques to overcome that much quicker. So that's the goal. I will tell you, it's going to take a good part of this year to complete it because I'm putting my whole heart into it. My other books are good. They've been the skill set in a certain area and they're a lot easier to write. But this one, I'm like pouring my whole life, like what made me the guy I am. And I'll say to add to this, I wouldn't change what happened to me if I could now because I love the guy. I love myself right now. And I don't see how, if I could magically take this away, that I would have learned the lessons that I learned. So I'm grateful for even having gone through this, which sounds crazy, but it's the true in my heart.
That's beautiful. And just to know that you've kind of deepened your own value for you. I mean, just for you is really awesome. Was there anything that was unexpected that someone did for you or someone sent to you or said that really helped? Because I think when other people are going through it, you just don't know what to do sometimes. So was there anything that really stood out for you that people did or wrote or said that really actually worked and helped?
Well, yeah, so many, brother. I can't even list them all, but what this triggers, I'll try to answer this the best way I can. All of us, I believe, have some part of us that still wonder if we're loved. And I have so many people that I know love me, but there's sometimes that doubt creeps in. This episode in my life proved to me for the first time in my life that I could feel like 100% that I'm loved. And it came from everywhere, from my family, from my kids, from even, I was talking about my team. Some of them had no idea if they were going to get paid. And they wrote back to my wife, like, don't even worry about it. Like, cause that's another thing. I still was the one approving payroll. I have bookkeepers and accountants, but they don't spend the company money without me pushing the button. Right. So no one stopped. I mean, if it was just any job, you'd be like, oh, I better go get a job. But my team cared so much. They're like, okay, I don't care. Steve's helped us. We're going to help him. And then all the pouring out of friends and such, family members. I mean, it was just overwhelming the amount of love that came my way. Then it's undeniable. Like there's no way in my mind I could say that I'm not loved. So it just basically totally pushed that over the edge to where I could own that love. Cause I think sometimes we don't receive.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you feel like now do you express that differently with the people in your lives easier? And do you feel like we just have to walk around and remind everybody in our lives how important they are to ourselves. And so how do you approach people now to acknowledge them so that they know that they're loved now?
You're absolutely right. I think we don't take time for that kind of kindness. You know, the compassion. How are you? How many times have I seen in our busy cities that you say, "How are you?" and people say, "How are you?" and they walk by like we said hello. No, it was actually a question. You know, can we stop and actually get to know each other? Can we find out, are you okay today? What else is going on? Remind ourselves that we're not workers. We're not just in this cog making the system. We're humans living a life. And so we need to treat it as such. And life comes first. People ask me, "Are you a life coach or a business coach?" And I say, "Well, I hope you don't die when you go to work." And now this is even more extreme. Now it's like we need to understand that these things are so important, and acknowledging those that are in my life and what they're giving is so important. And then make sure, what do they need? Like, are they okay, so we can keep this as a team? You know, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go somewhere quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
We use that all the time in our work. Yeah, you're never actually alone. It's just that it's the ego mind telling you that you're alone, you can't do it, belittling you. So thank you for sharing that. Just reminder to everybody, take a minute to just actually check in with people, hear their answer, be open to really sharing a real answer instead of good. I have this rule with my two boys. You can't answer me with a one word when I ask, how was your day? And they're getting a little snarky about it, but
They
tell me
tend to do that
something.
when they get older.
Yeah, tell me something qualitative, like give me some detail and, share what's going on with you in the world. How are you really feeling? How are you really doing? And if it's well, great. And if it's not well, then ask for something. I could use a hug. I could use a handshake. I could use let's go get a coffee and talk, like ask people, reach out, be vulnerable and allow that to arise. I think that's a beautiful message. So anything, I mean, you've shared so much with us today. Thank you so much for your time.
I
Anything
think
you'd love
asking
to,
for help.
Like what you just brought up. You know, I noticed when I was in the wheelchair, I was holding a glass and I was trying to go get water, and my hands are still messed up too. So I got some numbness. I'm trying to wheel and hold the glass and try to get water. And I was like, "Steve, what are you doing? You have four people in this house that love you, my three kids and my wife, and you're not asking for a glass of water." I realized how true, how that I still didn't ask enough. Like I'm such a doer. You know, we come from a long line of workaholics in my family, and that's why finding the Zen has been so important. But then I realized, so with this kind of thing happening in your life, it really levels everything out, and you're like, I'm still doing it there. I'm still doing it there. And so it just really, because guess what? The people that love you, they want to help you.
yeah, they want to feel valued and they want to give back and do something. It can be pretty tough on the people, that are trying to support you because they don't know what I was bringing that up earlier. People don't know what to do to help and they feel indebted and a little bit guilty and they want to do something to help and know that they can kind of lend a hand, literally.
Yes. And
Yeah.
yes.
And so I guess those are some of the hidden moments that I found, like true love in my life. Found that I could ask for help more often, delegate everything. That's the thing. If you have a business, delegate the whole thing.
Yeah,
Well, it
you have
reminds
to.
me, it reminds me of, a big mentor was also Richard Branson. There's no way he could run 300 companies of Virgin Group by doing the work. He has to be able to trust people, delegate, hire well, because even if you broke it down, it'd be one company a day for a year. It's incredible. So, hire good people, train them well, create process. Another mentor of mine said if you've done it once, you could train someone else and create a process around it once you've done it.
Yeah.
And then optimize that process. So it sounds like you're going to be working on all those things. So have you been back on the stage or are you getting back on the stage soon?
I've done 3 speaking engagements thus far. I've been really focusing on grooming my team. That's my number one. But yes, I'm open to speak on stage, share this story, and continue to teach the lessons on how we can choose gratitude and create freedom. But then, how do you bring that into your business and make that real, where you can actually grow revenue while working less hours? So that's really the topics there. And there's several that go around it, but that's the bulk of what it is that we're doing it right now. So we have been growing. So the last 3 months has kind of been starting to get back to work here, and just stepping in and being the mentor to my team at a high level. I think we're close to tripling our client base from last year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting, man. Thank you for being on today, sharing your story, and just being who you are. I love getting a chance to talk to you every time we speak. I was fortunate enough to be out, if you go back into our archives, see the interview we did with Steve in his house in California back then. And just, I love it. So you and Letterman have got the awesome beard going. Any beard advice to the bearded men out there of the world?
Well, if you're thinking about growing a beard, remember that it is maintenance as well as shaving. I got to comb and shampoo this thing.
It all takes work. It all takes work.
It does, but I definitely never done this before. So it's another thing that I'm just trying out. And, it goes back to life is short. So why not try something new?
Try new things. Steve, always just a blessing to get to hear you speak. And thank you again for taking the time. My best to your family and everybody. And just so glad you're back up on the stage. The business is back in action, and can't wait to see the book when it comes out. I'm guessing early 2024, it sounds like.
That's the plan. If we can get sooner, we'll announce it, but that's the target.
All right. Well, we'll put links to everything that you do. Steve's website is just hisname.com, which is easy to remember. And thank you, brother. I appreciate your time so much today.
Thank you for having me on here, Jared. It's my pleasure to share.
So for any of you, seeking more life, more freedom, creating gratitude, please reach out to Steve. If we can support you in any way at zenhustlers.com, feel free to review the website. We just released a video about how to go through the website and find all the different resources. Stay tuned for season 2 of the Zen Hustlers Balance podcast, and take care of yourselves out there, everybody. Thank you for watching today.